All right, so we've learned how to do a lot of editing now with our different kinds of things, and we've learned how to do some time, changed around the time settings on your clips and stuff like that. So one other thing you might want to try doing is effects. So effects are kind of one of those things I'm always hesitant to show to students because sometimes they go too crazy with it. So you probably watched one of those really bad like music videos or somebody really tweak the colors out and stuff like that. So don't do that. Just think about why do you need a filter? Why do you need an effect? Only use it for specific reasons. Don't use it to be gimmicky. But should you need one, should you want one of the things that you can do is go in here. So if you go into the effects panel, right? So it's here with media, browser, info, effects. And remember, anytime you can't find one, like if it's hidden because you've deleted it or closed it on accident, you can always go in here to window and just click on effects, and it'll make sure it brings it up for you so you can see it. So then all you got to do is just make sure you click on the cut or the clip that you want to have it happen to, and there's a whole bunch of things that you can do. So if you go in here to let's say video effects and go in there, and let's say one that you would probably legitimately want to use, it would just be brightness and contrast. So let's just drag that, and all you have to do is just kind of click. You can see they look kind of like Legos or something. I don't know why, but click and drag it and drop it onto the one that you want to play with. And it'll bring up the controls up here in the effects controls. And you can go in there and just change the brightness. So if I want to crank the brightness up on that, I could do that. And then crank the contrast up a little bit to make his bald head shine even more than it already does. You can do that. You can play around with it as much as you want to. You can also keyframe these things if that's something that you feel like doing. If you want to see how it, these are all the effects that have been applied to your clip. So that particular clip has had all these effects applied. One of them is motion, one of them is opacity, one of them is time remapping, so you can go in and turn those on and off. Some of these happen automatically. You don't need to worry about it too much. And if you don't like it, if you don't like the way it looks, you can just click on it here and just delete it, and it'll go back to normal. And remember, this is all non-destructive, so it's not actually altering the original file. It's just altering what it's going to look like when you export that. So there's a whole bunch of ones that you can go in here and do. You can, if you know what you're doing, you can go in there and do like sort of a like a Luma curve, and that can be a good one to add in there. And you can go in there and play around with the waveforms here, because a lot of people like to adjust their images and curves in Photoshop, Lightroom, and stuff like that. So if you want to, you can kind of go in here and play around with that. There's a million things you can do. You can keyframe things out. So sometimes that really is something that people like to do as well. But remember, if I'm going to have different pieces of footage in here, and I do something to one of them, and I want it to stay consistent, I should do it to the whole entire timeline, right? I should do it to everything. So you kind of got to keep that sort of stuff in mind as you go through. So there's also a million other terrible things you can do. I'm just kidding. But you can go in there and like add noise and grain if you want to. So you can click on one of those. If you add media into this, it's gonna and you crank up the radius on it, it's gonna make it look like a very blurry kind of an image. If you go in there and make that a little bigger for you. If you go in there and you add something like stylize, there's a million kinds of things you can do here. So if you want to grab the find edges one and drop it on there, you can do that, and now we've got kind of a weird looking line drawing thing that I don't quite know how to describe, right? And it changes. So like, let's say you're like, oh, well, I'd really rather have it find the edges before I do the media into it. Well, you can move the order around, and it'll change the way it looks sometimes with the order of the effects that you add. So these are just things that you can kind of totally goof around with in here. There's a strobe light effect. There's time effects in here too, like an echo and a posterized time thing. There's like deinterlacing kinds of things. You can put a pretend time code on there if you want to in the file. So there's a lot of stuff that you can just goof with. So use these thoughtfully, but there's no reason you can't do something fun with them. It's just a matter of figuring out why you're doing it and what you're doing. And no amount of filtering is going to change a bad shot or bad footage. So that's the basic effects. There's a lot of them down here. There's also things like, if you look through the folders, there's also audio effects if you want to play around with that sort of stuff on the audio files, and transitions and things like that we're going to play with next time. So that is kind of some of the stuff you can do with your with effects.